Today's guest, Jim Self, is an international teacher, speaker, and author who has been leading seminars on personal energy management and the tools of Mastering Alchemy since 1987. He is one of the few spiritual leaders to keep pace with the ongoing shift in human consciousness, constantly co-creating the Mastering Alchemy program with the Teachers of Light and offering new information through masteringalchemy.com in the form of free articles, videos, webinars, and ebooks. His audio and YouTube library includes enlightening discussions with the most interesting teachers and channelers around today. Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. It's my pleasure to bring on Jim Self. How are you doing today, Jim?
Shane, my pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Well, man, we've been, a lot of us are awakening to the fact that, we're supposed to be part of this transition that's going on from 3D to 5D, and you've got a lot of great practical tools. So when I came across your information, which I thought was much easier to follow than some of the stuff like in the I Am discourse, I think a lot of people didn't quite understand about, the world out there, the chaos, the noise out there, and, that we don't have to really get sucked into all of the noise going on out there, that we can really stay in our own space. And you've got some really great tools to help with this. So how are you doing? And welcome to the broadcast, man.
Great. Thanks. It's nice to be here. It's a really interesting time we're in because, as you say, everybody's waking up and everybody's really kind of going home. It's a process of waking up, remembering, beginning to access your own information, and then beginning to apply it. And that's what's so much fun. And my job is to provide as simple possible tools and concepts. So kind of where we work, there's no truth. This isn't the truth, if that makes sense. This is, try this out. What happens if you got grounded? What happens if you were able to view the world through a different set of eyes without being the effect of the emotions, the judgments, the rights, the wrong, the goods, and the bads? What if you could simply choose an action and then step into it? That's kind of where we play.
Yeah, another thing you talk about often is the baggage we have. I know a lot of us have baggage that we've carried along from our parents, our teachers, our ministers, and we just kind of carried along because that's, we've been doing it since we were so young that we don't realize that we can just let a lot of that stuff go and just really work on ourselves,
Yeah. Well, see, but they carried the baggage too, and then their parents carried. So what you are experiencing, or what we all experience, my growing up, you growing up, is the mom, dad, teacher, minister told you what they knew, and they only knew what they knew, and they didn't know what they didn't know. But at the same time, in the nature of the game of 3D, which has rules and structures to it that most people don't have any sense of, but in that context, one of the things that occurred is quite often the mom, dad, teacher, minister, let's say they love you, give them completely the benefit of the doubt, they wanted the best for you, but what they did is they created you in their image. We're going to go to these schools, we're going to not go to those, talk to these people, not those, eat this food, not those foods. This is what we do, and this is what's right and wrong, good and bad, and how we should do it. And so that message to a little kid doesn't really give the little kid a lot of room to fall down on their nose and recognize, oh, I can do this differently. It's, here's the truth. This is what we believe. This is how you're going to be successful. And to a great extent, that was very restrictive and confining to a spiritual being that's wanting to go explore.
Definitely. So let's back up a little bit and talk about how you're a little bit different in your sleep time than most people.
Yeah. So in my, in my life, moving along like everybody else's life, it was completely fit with starts and errors and, why are you so stupid and you don't fit and all those kind of messages that the world gives you. My case, when I get to this age where I am and I look back, there were no missteps all along the way, but you don't see those when you go along. But in my reality, all these, let's talk about it this way, all these experiences or all these spiritual abilities you have. People call them psychic abilities. You see, you hear, you feel, you have perceptions. A lot of times, two things happen. You think everybody does it just like you do. Many times that's not true. And, or you think something's wrong with you because you're having this experience and nobody else is. And so that's something that gets learned as you move through this game. But in my case, a lot of things were turned on and they were still on. See, when you come into the body, you come in with all those great gifts. And then the mom, dad, teacher, minister say don't and stop lying, stop making up stories. And we start to turn it all, we turn away from it. We don't turn it off. In my reality, I didn't turn it off. It was awkward in some cases, but in my reality also, when I go to sleep at night, just like you go to sleep at night, you go home. You go back into that fullness of all you are, fully conscious. Very different than the game we play here in these bodies. But the difference is I remember an awful lot of what happens when I come back into the body. Most people don't.
That's amazing. You mentioned in one of your videos that a lot of us just kind of go to bed without clearing. Can you go into what it is to clear? I mean, if because this is going to begin to happen to everyone eventually. Is that correct?
Absolutely. See, what's happening is you're starting to wake up. You're starting to remember. And what you're remembering is you. You're remembering all these things that you know that you shut down in order to come into the body and play this very limited game that we're playing. But it's all we know, so we don't have any way of understanding how to bring back a lot of this information. So one of the things that happens is people go through their day. One of the structures of the third dimensional game, which is important to understand, is we consider time to be absolute. The past, present, future, then you die. That's all there is to it, time. But when you get into present time, you start to have a whole different reality. Present time meaning right now. Now, when in the sleep space, what makes it so difficult for most people in the sleep space is they're carrying all this baggage. He said, she said, I'm worrying about tomorrow. I wish I had never done this in my past. And so your attention gets focused into the past and the future. Very little do you spend in right now, how do I create? But when you start to go to sleep at night, what we do is we we worry about our day. This happened, that happened. Oh my God, what am I going to do tomorrow? And you fall asleep in that space. But if you were to simply stop in present time, I'm ready to go to sleep, and I'm going to simply collect myself up. What I mean by that is, if you look back at your day and you say, where did I leave myself? All of a sudden, you'll have all these memories of your day. If you were to just simply, we have a little tool, a rose. Everybody knows what a rose is. But if you created a mental image picture of a rose and you gave it a command that said, collect me up, and you looked back at your day and you realize, I'm angry here, I was off balance there, I'm going to just collect me up. I'm going to be fine right where I am. How much of your attention is in the future? I hope, I wish, I'm worried about, this concerns me. When you're in those vibrations, you're not in present time. So if you can call yourself back and get in present time, the ability to enter that sleep space and begin to remember it when you come back is enhanced significantly. Plus, you get a much better night's sleep.
Definitely. Yeah, I've noticed that if I'm thinking like what you're saying, like thinking about the day or whatever, I don't get the images in my brain. Like when I'm just falling into the theta state, I'll be getting like random images that, like, I know I'm not generating them. It's like I'm seeing some pictures from somewhere. I have no idea what they are, but I don't get that if I'm sort of worrying about tomorrow or thinking about the day or whatever. It doesn't happen. So, yeah.
See, a lot of that theta state, that real quiet space, is present time, and it begins to expand an awareness that's there all the time. But when you're so busy arguing and pushing and worrying, you miss the movie, you miss the whole experience. So when you get yourself quiet in either a meditation state or one of the pieces of this that's always fascinating to me is you think in different layers of thought. You don't think in the same place all the time. So theta is one of those different layers of thought. You bring the body into a very slow vibrational field. But basically, in that field, your awareness opens up. So when you go to sleep in that space, in real terms, you're asleep before you ever think you're asleep. You think you're thinking. Think about it. If a door slams just before you're asleep, you kind of jerk back into the body. It's like this shock. You were on your way out of the body. You were asleep already in that sleep space. Also in that space, you begin to have awareness, concepts, considerations, thoughts that are in that space, but they're not in my hurry up, worry about space.
So are the dreams that we typically remember when we wake up, is that somewhere in between home and here? Like, I mean, is that a layer we pass through where we sort of have dreams, or are those little snippets of when we go home?
So what happens is you leave the body and you go out of the body and you go home and you start to get further away from the body. So there are very specific mechanics to that. There is what people call the astral body, which is more accurately called the etheric body. You have and you have a physical body. But when you go to sleep, the space that you as a consciousness, the etheric body, the mental emotional body, all separate from the physical body. And that separation occurs at what's called the acupuncture points, the meridian system of the body. So the physical body, all those acupuncture points are magnets or vortexes. And if you spin them one way, they get tightened down. If you spin them another way, they loosen up. And so you say, I'm going to sleep. And the body starts to spin those to loosen up. The body wants to go into rest and rejuvenation. It wants to rebuild itself. But you simply begin to disconnect from the acupuncture points. You're fully conscious. You start to move away from the body. So that first layer of moving away is you're asleep. You're mostly beginning to even access that dream space, but you're moving away from the body. So the body doesn't hold the memory of what happens as you move away. When you come back to the body, you come back right through that same astral space. You get closer to the body, or in the middle of the night, you get up to pee and you're in all these dreams. You never came back into the body fully. You just came back enough to find the bathroom, walk back, fall in bed, boom, right back into the sleep space. So when you have dreams, it's always coming back into the body for 99% of the people. I'm getting closer, 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 astral plane. I'm starting to notice, and then I dock back into the body, and immediately you go into yesterday. So you go to sleep and you don't clean your space out. Everything that's about where you went to sleep didn't go anywhere. You come back, there's yesterday, waiting for you again. So in that moment, I'm having dreams, and they're good, they're bad, whatever they are. But once you get into the body turns back on into yesterday, or my worries, or my hopes, my dreams. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Very mechanical.
So I think a good place to go with this is, we've been talking about, there's so many different versions of how we're moving from 3D to 5D. And some people think of it as like, dimensions up, down, left, right, spatial dimensions in time or whatever. But really, it's not really the physical dimension we're talking about. We're talking more about a box or a set of rules. I think you explained it like, there's a set of rules in 3D. And then as we move into 4D and 5D, those 3D things in that box are going to begin to fall away. Can you kind of explain the transition from 3D to 5D?
Sure. So 3D, one of the key components to 3D is time, as I mentioned earlier. And if you think about time, for the most part, you're in the past or in the future. You spend very little time right here, the average person. Right now, we're in present time. We're not thinking about past and future. So, but in present time is the only place you create, the only place you can make anything happen. In that past and future, you can never change your past, and you cannot create your future in the future. But when you get into present time, that ability to change your past is very real, and create a future is very real. But the third dimensional box is conditional. There is nothing unconditional in that third dimensional box. You live in the third, fourth, and fifth dimension simultaneously, although you don't pay attention to most of the fifth or fourth dimension. You find that in that box, third dimension, it is all based on dualities and separation. So right, wrong, good, bad, limitations, rules, shoulds and shouldn'ts are what determine how you exist in that third dimensional box, being simple. When you get into present time, let's call that fourth dimension. In that fourth dimensional present time, it gets really interesting because a couple of things happen. In fourth dimension, you have choice. In third dimension, you have reaction. In that third dimensional box, you do not have choice. You simply are in a, oh my God, this wasn't supposed to happen. I'm in present time, but I'm in reaction. In fourth dimension, right here, I say, what would you like to have for dinner? You know, pizza or hot dogs? Right now, you can say, well, I'll have the pizza. That was a choice. That happens in fourth dimension. Also, what happens in fourth dimension, besides present time, is the only place you play in fourth dimension, is there's a funny word called paradox. And this is huge because paradox says what was true just a moment ago may not be true now, and what was false may not be false. In third dimension, I don't like that person, they're dishonest, they're always been dishonest, there always will be dishonest. Absolutes, limitations, always and never. No room for change. In fourth dimension, I didn't like you in third grade when you stole from me. What are you doing on my front porch? All of a sudden, I have room rather than just throwing the person off the porch because they're always going to be bad. So that word paradox creates a tremendous freedom to begin to let you go from I was bad, I didn't do it right, why am I stupid, how come they don't like me? See, that's the baggage we all carry around. In this fourth dimensional space, very much is a working space. You realize they didn't like me, I'm not okay, I'm not smart, I'll never succeed. The key piece to that is understand that is somebody else's bad day, that they simply handed you a gift, in a manner of speaking, and they said, here, you're not okay. And what we do in third dimension is we constantly try to solve that puzzle. I'm not okay. What did I do wrong? And the reality is you did nothing wrong. You cannot be not okay in this lifetime. What you can do is you can wear a shirt too small or shoes that don't fit and be really irritated at your life. But in this case, all of the you're not okays, I don't fit, nobody likes me, I'm never going to be smart. Every one of those was somebody else saying to you, the mom, dad, teacher, minister, you don't fit my belief system, my profile, my wants for you. You're not okay. The key to this is you can't be not okay. So once in fourth dimension, present time, you start to realize that was somebody else's bad day that they dumped into my space. And I've been asking what's wrong with me. We've been asking the wrong question. The reality is, thank you very much for your opinion, but I don't accept it. In that fourth dimensional space, the ability to rearrange your past, to simply let go of the shame, the blame, the guilt, all of those kind of vibrations that we each hold. In present time, you realize, I don't need to carry that event when I was 6 years old anymore. It really isn't real in my current space. So in this fourth dimensional space, paradox becomes a tremendous tool. The fifth dimensional box is all about well-being and beauty and graciousness, the smile in the heart, cooperation, appreciation, gratitude. See, but right here, those are simply words. The rational, if I said to you, do you know what certainty is? People go, oh yeah, I know what certainty is. But if I changed it and I said, close your eyes, sit back, and would you feel certain? That's really very different than the rational mind understanding versus the heart feeling. So when you begin to step into the fifth dimension, the feeling of certain or capable, gracious appreciation as a feeling begins to get woven into a platform, a place that this is who I am. And there's your I am discourse beginning to turn into practical applications. I'm fine. I am okay. I have my seniority. This is who I am. Gracious, respectful, dignified. That world is the fifth dimensional world. That's where all the millennials are going to convert that into a tremendous space of well-being as they begin to progress. All of you begin to progress into that space. It's very exciting what's possible when you understand the dimensions as a box and you're not locked into it.
That's wonderful, and that really, I think that's a great place to segue into the difference between emotions and feelings, because it really is, there is a difference. And I've noticed that even, within the chat, you can really feel this unconditional love and gratitude amongst the people that sort of found each other, many of them through this Mandela effect. And that, to take a step back, when you were talking about this paradox where what was true yesterday isn't true right now, we're seeing that play out in reality itself for many of us as we see our realities dissolve away. And you're like, that's not the memory I had. And it appears that it never was, and it doesn't really have to be. And I think that's an indication that we can take it much further than that. We don't have to carry this baggage along with us. So let's talk about the difference in emotions and really feeling that okayness, or I'm okay, or that certainty that everything is working out just as it's supposed to.
Yeah. Well, let me correct. It's not like it's supposed to. It's like you want it. It's what is you're a creator being. Every human being is a creator being. That's really a very unique category that will be understood someday, because all beings and all that is, most of them are not creator beings. But in this particular case, this emotion and feeling has always been defined by the head in people's realities. When you say, well, what's the difference? And a lot of times the answer is not a very clear, helpful answer. But here, what's happening when you start to look at emotions, there's a bigger story to this, but the rational mind, how you think, the job of the rational mind is to keep you safe and have you fit in. Now, if you think about it, everything you do is because they said, and I'm trying to benefit them. I'm listening to them. I'm working on my rules are because they told me. And a lot of times that doesn't feel good. It makes sense to fit in, but it doesn't feel good to me. So if you begin to recognize emotions are how the rational mind over many, many, many eons of times has determined what a circumstance is. I'm in a circumstance and this is anger, or this is jealousy, or this is rage. When you begin to play with the rational mind's definition of feelings, the better word is emotions. And when you think about emotions, in this case, emotions have edges on them. If you say, I'm jealous, there's an edge to that: anger, resentment, rage. But when you say appreciation, gratitude, certainty, kindness, well-being, there's no edge. And so feelings are generated from the heart. Feelings are who you are. You're all about how you navigate in well-being. But that's not the game we've been taught in third dimension. Be safe, watch out for those people, do it this way. That person's jealous of you over there. Those are all the rational mind thinking through navigating its world to keep you safe and have you fit in. But when you start to drop into the heart, the movement to the fifth dimension begins to be much more possible.
Ah, that's beautiful. Well, let's talk about some of the tools. I think the rose is one that's sort of simple enough to present it here. I know you've got a free webinar I'm signed up for on the 12th, so I recommend anybody to definitely get in on that. That link is in the description. You can sign up on the website. Mind Alchemy, or let's see, it's
Masteringalchemy.com.
masteringalchemy.com. Yeah, it's below.
Yeah.
And you can just sign up on there. It's real easy to do. It takes a second. But yeah, let's talk about the rose, because I think that's a great place to start for people, that, you know, to sort of make that distinction between all of the mess going on out there and, you know, our own well-being,
Yeah.
our own
Yeah.
space.
Let me put this, this is virtually one of the three first tools that we teach. And the whole program of Mastering Alchemy takes you through some time. It's not a overnight weekend course type of thing, but the purpose is to get you to remember and build that living light body. And at that particular point, people have said, what are the most important of all these huge amount of tools and concepts you've taught? What would you say are the most important two tools there is? The rose is the first thing that I tell them. It's why it's beginning to be one of the first tools you play with. So for example, in that space growing up, I'm not okay, you're stupid, you don't make sense, what's wrong with you? It's very hard to navigate your world when you don't have a point of delineation between what is me, who am I, and what is Shakespeare's theater out there that's playing out in my awareness. With no point of delineation between me and the world, you're constantly overwhelmed by the world and all the world's opinions, mostly about what's wrong with you. This rose is a simple thing. Everybody has an aura, that energetic field. You know it when somebody steps too close to you, you kind of step back. That's that space where they just stepped into the aura, into your space. So in simple terms, if you, a person, in fact, everybody listening, do this right now, it'll make even more sense. If you stick your arm straight out in front of you and bend your palm towards you, plus or minus, arm straight, plus or minus, that's the edge of your aura. Might be an inch or two difference, but here it doesn't matter. We use this concept called a rose. You know what a red rose looks like. In your imagination, if you would hold your thumb and forefinger together and create a rose in your imagination, and then stick your arm out and place the rose right on the edge of your aura. Now, it's a mental image picture, but play with me. Create the rose, and then what you're going to do is hold your hand up there for a minute and call you back. Where have you left yourself in life? I am not okay. I'm worried about. If you just call you back and you be on your side of the rose, take a breath, be in present time, because playing the game puts you in present time. You realize from that point to my heart is me. This is my space. Everything on the other side of the rose is Shakespeare's theater to entertain you. If you keep the rose up, put your hand down, but just kind of imagine the rose right there. You're making a point of distinction. Me, everything else. This tool, as simple as it sounds, if you practice, go to the supermarket, talk to people through your rose. Just don't hold your hand up necessarily, but just talk through that space. What begins to be happening is, one, you're in present time. Two, you're able to start to discern, is this my truth? Is this something I want to play in? Do I want to put my finger in that light socket or not? You have choice. Remember that fourth dimensional present time choice. On my side of the rose, my mother saying, my father saying, my teacher saying, they're all telling me this, but is it my truth? Is it what I believe, what I want to live? Does it feel right? Versus, okay, I understand that I'm not okay in the rational mind. The rose allows you to begin to have perception and perspective in a manner that is so ridiculously simple. But if you were taught that as a little kid, your whole personality engaging with the world is from joy and happiness and discernment. Very different than the world we've all grown up in.
Definitely. So one of the things that I've began to notice, and I don't know if it's the energies, but I know that particular tool, the rose, will certainly help with anxiety about everything we see going on around us, because you begin to realize that that has nothing to do with me. That all the politics and just all of the stuff going on out there. Even when you think of volcanoes and world changes, for most of us, those things aren't really affecting us personally. I mean, our heart goes out to people, and we feel for those people that are affected directly by that. But they really don't have to intrude into the space you're talking about to really consume us. And I've been noticing a lot of people are getting irritated. Not the people that are waking up, but the other people seem to be getting more agitated. And I don't know if is it the new energies coming in? Is it the 3D falling away? What are your thoughts on that?
Both. It's absolutely both. Everybody's going home, all right? So home is a big word, but everybody's moving into this 5D space. You can't take your baggage with you on this journey, however. You can't take I'm not okay into a space where well-being and beauty is really the nature of the experience. So these waves of light are coming in, huge waves of transformation. And the game is being changed. And everything that's being changed externally is directly related to the internal nature of humanity. So what's happening is the status quo is being disrupted. Your sense of stability is being disrupted. Most of that is the baggage. You can no longer hold on to a world that is imposing, dictatorial, that's all about greed, is imposing on one another in terms of racism or sexism or words like that. You can't take that into a fifth dimensional space. So this spiritual shift, this transformation that really kicked in 2012 is moving everybody into this space. You can't take your baggage. So what you're watching is people who are finding that there's a lot of disruption. They're uncertain. They're not clear. Some people, kind of one strata of consciousness, which is what you're looking at to a great extent in politics today, is digging in its heels, trying to draw more lines, right and wrong, good and bad, should and shouldn't. And here's what you need to do. It's the third dimensional box speaking out very loudly. Whereas others are saying, you don't take kids away from parents, no matter what. So that fifth dimensional set of choices. How do you create well-being? How do you say hello to people? How do you make something work? The challenge is, if you look at every system in our experience, they're all broken very badly. Educational system, legal system, court systems, how we move around in the world, they're all broken. The challenge really is they're broken. You can't just put another Band-Aid on them. And that's what a Congress does. They keep avoiding the big questions. One of these days, the big questions are going to bite everybody in the butt. It's this disconnection is going to happen. So that's not meant to be a prediction, and it's definitely not meant to be a statement of fear. It just is going to happen. You can't continue to have trillions of dollars of debt with nobody accountable to the process. So when you begin to recognize this transition is what it's about, the gifts that you were given, I'm not okay, aren't even yours. When you start to practice some of these tools, simple as grounding, finding the center of your head, recognizing it, like in this webinar we're going to do Thursday, it's very much about a simple concept called law of attraction. And everybody says, oh, I know all about the law of attraction. And no, you don't. The law of attraction is so ridiculously simple that people can't handle it, actually. It says what you put your attention on, I, the universe who absolutely adores you, will provide for you. The challenge is there's no small print that says, just don't give me the bad stuff. Also, the universe doesn't understand English and French and Spanish. What it understands is vibrations. And so when you're walking around, I'm not okay, I am a bad person, they don't like me, what do you think the vibration is you're holding on to? And the universe wakes up the next morning and says, oh, Jim, I see you're still in anxiety about not being okay. Let me give you another configuration of this. And that's what you wake up in the next morning. So recognizing that you are capable and have a tremendous amount of strength, and basically beginning to apply tools that allow you to dismantle these belief systems. Literally, no therapy, just simply, oh, I understand that's not mine. And there are a whole series of tools that simply short circuit that electromagnetic field. Gone. That's the transitioning that we're in. You can't take your baggage.
So it's even okay. So for a lot of people that's having trouble with this, they're sort of stuck in the daily grind of work and just politics and all of that. Even if they're unhappy with that stuff, they've sort of become comfortable with it. They're sort of in this place where, you know, they're hanging on to it without even realizing that they're hanging on to it, because they haven't made this separation between themselves and all the noise out there. Is that pretty much a good way of looking at it?
Pretty much excellent. See, this is where Mastering Alchemy and this whole work, see, it's not just me, it's the archangelics, it's the ascended masters, the lords of light. We've all constructed this program that basically says, I understand you're having a challenge, and I understand you hate work, and your relationship's not working, and you're stuck, and you don't have enough money, and you don't like the politics, and you don't know what to do. So what if you had a platform of feelings? What if you could build a construct that said, just for this moment in present time never ends, but right now, if you could feel certain, have a sense of capability, find the smile in the heart, have a sense of strength, and that rose, I can discern and choose versus reacting and being the effect. When you begin to have a slightly different perspective on how to navigate this, the whole world begins to open up to you. But what people say is, I don't know how to do it different, because I only know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know. That I don't know what I don't know is what you call the Mandela effect. Very, very real. I am now beginning to have inklings. I'm beginning to have little thoughts, concepts, visions. I'm beginning to all of a sudden have an idea, what I never thought of this. I could do this differently. Where did that come from? It's coming from this awakening that is allowing everybody to begin to find that fourth dimensional space where they can begin to choose rather than continuously stuck in the reaction.
That's amazing. So do you see things, just stranger things happening to wake more and more people up? Because everybody eventually has to wake up to this, right? This
They
change.
will. And there was a whole long period of time where, see, it's fascinating. The archangelics will say often, we know all of the possibilities, we know all of the probabilities, but you have the physical body, and it's only you in a physicalness that can change form in physicalness. We can't. So the patterns have been being built for a long time, and there was a hope. There was a concept called the New Earth, and there was a hope that that new strata, let's just call the New Earth the fifth dimension. Let's not look at it as a physical body at all, but that shifting consciousness was going to happen smoothly. It's not. That probability is no longer on the table. So what you're seeing happen is two stratas of consciousness beginning to be formed in a different way. Those that can basically believe in well-being and beauty and appropriateness, and those that are digging in their heels. Now, everybody's going to go home, but they're not going home on the same train. And so this space that's starting to happen where people like you and the people that follow you, the people that, thousands of people that do our work, you're starting to say, I have choice. I simply choose well-being, respect, dignity, humility. I choose that. Now, it's hard because I still don't think I'm okay. And so the platform begins to allow you to have a point of freedom, a place where you can step away from my problem. We just did a lecture the other day. It's really, I'm fine and I'm not my stuff. See, people, I'm my stuff, I'm my problem, I'm my money problem, I'm my bad relationship. No, you're not. You're fine and I have stuff. So very much the rose is one of these things where I'm fine. Here's my stuff. Once you believe I'm fine, the ability to deal with your stuff takes on a very different dynamic. You start to navigate through it without it being all over your face where you can't see the difference or the lines. So this transition, as it's beginning to unfold, is there are opportunities that are beginning to be made available. Let's call it waking up. Let's call it the Mandela effect. It's basically a place where you are getting quiet enough that you begin to see what's available that you can't see when your head is buried in your stuff. And that's the shift that's unfolding.
That's amazing. So everybody they're gonna have their own thing that wakes them up, so to speak, and we're gonna have more gifts coming online, like telepathy and things like that. Are these things we can expect in the future as well?
Absolutely. See, all those gifts you have already. It's not that I'm not okay. It's that I've turned away from paying attention to the feeling of being okay. It's not that I'm not telepathic. Telepathy is simple. People go, well, what is telepathic? Do you finish people's sentences for them when you're talking to them? If the answer is yes, what happens is the only way you can do that, and the better question is, well, why don't I do it for some people and I do it for other people? Generally, your telepathy is known when you are with somebody you really like, when you are matched. You're not like this, you're in this match. I know you because I feel like you feel. What happens is when you're in that matched space, like a best friend growing up or a sibling, you just look at them and you know what they're about to say. You finish their sentences. That's called narrowband telepathy. The key to it is everybody's got it, but most people only get to it when they're happy, they're enthusiastic, they like or trust the person. But once the match is a little bit out of alignment, that skill set doesn't work as well. But when you also know yourself, when you're in that state of balance on your side of the rose, grounded, perceiving from the higher mind and the heart, telepathy becomes something that it's a skill set that becomes very, very available to you. All of those they're there. We're coming back to them. We're getting balanced. We're beginning to perceive outside of the fears that we have held all our life.
So that being in the moment is really sort of tied into, because I've noticed that whenever synchronicities happen, it seems like it happens when you're in the moment, whether it's repeating numbers on the clock or running into someone that, at a specific time, or overhearing something that seemed like it was for you, like it could be another conversation. And it's like noticing all of these things, and they seem to be ramping up. Is that all part of this whole transition as well?
Absolutely. And it only happens in the moment. Think about it as concentric circles. So like right here, you and I are right here. There's that concentric circle's pretty tight. We're having a conversation. But if I was to say, hey, how's the rest of your day going to be? I just loosened my space up. I brought more of the rest of your day into my space. And now we're just kind of having more of a casual conversation. We get a little bit, we're still in present time, but it begins to be not tailored in a manner. If you start to then say, well, how was your dinner last night? And what are you going to do next week on vacation? Those concentric circles start to get bigger and bigger. You're not in a place of perception. Somebody walks by you and you're talking about next week's vacation and you don't even see them. And so it's really, the key to that is you can be in present time, and in present time you can have the conversation about the vacation. You can talk about many other things in present time. And you're not moving in and out of these big concentric circles into the past and the future. That's a skill set. Present time in that context is somewhat of a mastery. Not complicated, just needs some repetition to begin to realize, oh, here I am. I'm observing from my side of the rose. From that place, your consciousness begins to open and you have choice and choices.
That also seems like it opens up the communication with a higher self, a divinity. I don't know what you want to call it, but it seems like a lot of times if you're sort of worried about the past, worried about the future, or troubled about things that's happened in the past, all of those things kind of keep you out of the moment. But if you can stay in the moment, you'll get these, you know, people call them downloads or intuition, whatever you
Yes.
want to call it. And it seems like information, like we've got all this help available, resources available to us, but we're so busy with the past and the future that we're not in that moment to receive that stuff. Because when
Right.
it seems like in meditation, things like that, when you're in the moment, it seems like you get an idea, you know, and it doesn't seem like it always comes from your own mind. It seems like
Right.
higher help.
The waking up is really fascinating. It's wonderful. It's exciting because you're all of a sudden realizing, wow, something's going on and there's an excitement in it. See, there's a lot of information that has been made available to a person waiting for them to wake up. This whole shift has been altering their own realities. You and your sleep space are altering your physical reality, just waiting for you to wake up to take these downloads. And so that's when it's like, whoa, I just had this amazing thought and this awareness. That is all being downloaded. But there's a place where there's here's an expanded piece of information. You are the higher self. You are the soul. But in the case of the higher self, see, the higher self will not come into your ain't it awful, I'm so bad, I don't deserve space. It just stands there right on the outside of it. It allows you to wallow in your terribleness all you want. It's never going to come there to fix you. It'll sit right here and it'll share with you when you rise up into well-being, but it will not come down into pity and poor me and I'm no good and I don't deserve. It'll allow you to wallow in that space for a long, long time. But when you start to begin to be aware, awakening up into this fifth dimensional space, respect, dignity, joy, what a beautiful smile in the little baby. You know, you're walking by, it's like, yeah, this feels good. That's where you've risen up to the level of the higher self. As a person gets more masterful about the rose and about grounded and about thinking from the heart, because that's very different than thinking of the rational mind, perceiving, observing, allowing, those skill sets, clairvoyance kicks in, you realize this isn't going to be good in about a week if they do this. Oh, you say those things and you recognize, but to do that, you have to use your clairvoyance, the skill to look into the future to see what's going to happen if this string continues. It's not magic. It's part of an awareness. But that part of the awareness only happens in present time. It's like, oh, yeah, I see this. This isn't good. So at that point, as a masterful being, as you begin to get more capable in all of these different perceptions, you start to realize that this will sound funny, but a lot of times I wait till a person is in their most vulnerable place, their worst place that they're taking themselves. Higher self will occasionally inject here, but in that space, they're vulnerable. And it's in that space where they are really in need. That's when a master basically says, can I help you? Have you noticed they're hiring down the street? I heard they're giving people jobs. And all of a sudden the person gets a job. You see them 3 days later. They're tremendously excited. Do they remember you gave them the piece of information? No. Does it matter? No. See, that mastery, that sense of alignment, that level of magnified light that you hold in that heart is something that is joyful to play in. See, the game is not 50-50. The game is 100% about me, 100% about me, and 100% about service to others. And there is no difference. That's not 200%. That's 100% in alignment with the well-being and the uplifting and the nurturing and the kindness. That's when the magic begins to kick in. That's when you realize I can sit here and radiate, and I say this to all the people in the light body, there'll come a day where you'll sit in this brilliant golden light and just sit on a park bench in some city in the world, and people will come up and they'll put down their guns. And they'll actually say, I'm not sure why I've ever even had this. And they'll forget. You didn't program them. You just begin to have this radiance of light that's so magnificent that it provides choice. that people basically say from the heart, I want well-being. I want to go home. That's what's going to happen in the fifth dimension. That's what's going to happen to people like you and the people who are listening to you. You're going to wake up. You're going to remember. You're going to remember the intensity of joy and the capacity of mastery where you don't inject when that person cannot have it. That concept of don't cast your pearls before swine is a very real concept. If they can't have what you have to offer, one of the hardest things in the world, walk away. If they are going to bite your hand, walk away. Pay attention till the time where they can have what you have, but don't give it prematurely. A very tough lesson to learn, and you'll fail at it 50 times, and then you'll fail at it another 50 times when you think you got it. But being kind is one of the hardest things to do to a person in step away from and withhold your kindness because they can't have it. You got to let them get to that place where they simply are so vulnerable that they can have well-being. That's not meant to be mean. It's not meant, does that make sense?
They just can't accept it. They're not at a place where they can.
Right. But the challenge is it's all about you being able to discern stepping forward or stepping away in certain circumstances. But in that place, you're going to start to find more and more views. It's what you're doing is so important because you're impacting those that are waking up just 2 steps behind you. And the hello that you give them, they start to realize there's opportunity, there's possibilities, and they start to fly. And that's what it's really all about.
That's great because you really put into perspective the idea, because we often hear just hold the light and, you know, and to be that beacon, and it's like we're here to hold the light, and you hear that a lot, but you really put it in a perspective that we can understand, because if we are sort of getting impatient at the, you know, and tired of dealing with everything, we're not holding the light, because we're not even taking care of our own well-being to where people are looking to us like as beacons, you know, if we haven't taken care of ourselves. So holding the light, you've really put, you know, an idea in my mind of what that actually means. And if we're not at that state, we're not actually doing our job. So, you know, a lot of us are getting impatient. I see it all the time. It's like, when is the shift going to happen? Because a lot of people think it's going to happen overnight, but this is a process. It's going to take a while, right?
You can watch it unfold in the next 20 years in really amazing ways. And it still has another 60 years to go before it gets to the place that we're talking about, people putting down their guns because they step into a vibrant light. Now, people will put down their guns, many will before that, but it's this oneness, this unified field of consciousness. And see that in these higher dimensions, the level we're talking about, fifth dimension, is really the doorway into the fifth dimension. There's so much more to this, but there's no baggage in the fifth dimension. Words like trust or safety don't exist in the fifth dimension. There's nothing to distrust, and there's nothing that is unsafe. Now, can things not work? How, absolutely. You know, think about you as a little kid, how many times you built your blocks and they fell over, and you built and then it got to the point where you kept building them to see how high you could get it before it fell over. And then it was like, yes, there it goes. And you laugh. That's the space that we're all moving to, but we're early in this transition. But see, one of the things about this level of light, radiating this level of light, it's important to recognize that we have 2 real classic examples of duality. Watch CNN and watch Fox News. Dramatically different dichotomies and dualities that you're watching. And is there ever going to be a resolution between those 2 realities? No resolution. Neither can have even beginning to have concept that, yeah, that's a good point you make. I can hear it. They can't do that. So when you use those 2 as a frame of reference in terms of duality, and you realize how mismatched those 2 are. I mean, I can love Rachel Maddow, or I could love Lou Dobbs, you know, but when you're into that, the ability to discern, the ability to choose, the ability to navigate an answer, does not exist. And so that's the space where I want to believe well-being, but it's really something that you've got to live, and you've got to live it without taking the sides. Because as soon as you take the sides, that's different than observing. I don't like what I see, but I'm not going to put my finger into that. I'm not going to join into throwing rocks in that. If you can make a difference and you're clear that what you do is making a difference, do it. But one of the things that I watch is, if you cannot contribute, if there's no value added by you engaging in that particular activity, even though you don't like to see it, pull your energy out of it. If you can't influence it, you put your energy into it, and it begins to be like an electric socket. It just starts sucking you drier and drier and drier. So choose your battles, choose your choices where there's opportunity for well-being. And the biggest piece that's hard is step back and recognize, what do I want? Who am I? How do I contribute? What makes me happy? If you can keep an attention point on that, then navigating the fifth dimension is simply opening the door. But when you're in the arguments of duality, you are in the arguments of third dimension. And that's part of the baggage and the bigger journey out of it.
And we really need to take that step back and just be the observer. And like you said, typically if you can't, because so much of what we get involved in, we can't affect it no matter what we do. It's just sort of how it is, and we can, get sucked into the politics and all of that. And, you can actually feel like you're taking part by going and picketing or doing something like that. But are you really making a change? As much of a change as you would make if you stepped out of it and became the beacon like we talked about.
Yeah.
That's how you affect it.
That's not easy for a lot of people, and especially right here where there's a lot of waking up going. And people define things in rights and wrongs. I get it. What's happening to taking babies away from parents that are seeking asylum from a terrible part of the world? Do you really want to punish those people and categorize them as, rapists and murderers? Come on.
All right.
That's wrong. So can I say right and wrong? Sure, I can recognize. Let's take the word right and wrong out and use the word appropriate or inappropriate. It's a little softer than edgy right and wrong. Is that an appropriate action? No. By me standing on a picket line saying, I do not agree, can I make that have value because that's my only way I can see him making contribution? Go hold the sign. So it's not about taking something away and don't do this and do this because then I'm your mom, dad, teacher, minister all over again saying, here's the truth. The truth is right here. This is the only place that the truth exists. And you're the only one that counts. There's nobody else that counts. See, there's another part of this when you begin to recognize this transition. This is your play. You are the premier actor, actress in your play. Everything else is the props, the backdrops, the staging, the secondary actors and the actress to entertain you and your play. And when you start to really look at it from that standpoint, how do you want your play to unfold? And when you begin to get rid of the sense of third dimension anger and resentment or jealousy or I don't like them, and you realize it's just baggage in your space, they may be perfectly okay. They're just lighting up your pictures for you. When you start to clean that out, you'll find the ones you don't like, you've removed them from your play. They just say, I did my job, I'm out of here now. And you'll never see that person again. You didn't fire them. You didn't throw them out. There's no longer a purpose for that actor. That make any sense?
That makes perfect sense.
But it's all about you.
Let's talk about, you've got this webinar coming up. Let's talk about that and how people can get a hold of your materials. I do have all your links below, by the way, for those joining in late.
Masteringalchemy.com. Every month we do a free lecture, and a lot of times for our level 1 basic tools work, we provide a lot of free meditations, a lot of additional work. Mastering Alchemy is not meant to be an expensive thing. I mean, level 1 is $75, so it's not a big deal. 14 hours of information, me one-on-one with you, do this, what happened. So we give away far more than we charge for. But go there, look in the I don't even know what it's called, archives, and you'll find tons of free lectures, tons of tools, tons of instruction, concepts like this. But the webinar coming up Thursday night is all about this law of attraction. There's a wonderful teacher that started in the 90s called Esther Hicks. And Esther Hicks channels a grouping of beings called Abraham. Mm-hmm. And for years, all she taught was 3 things: law of attraction, law of deliberate intention, and the law of allowing. Allow others while you allow yourself. And those 3 concepts begin to allow you to shift into everything we've been talking about, because they provide a perspective that allows you to step out of the game, step out of the noise, step out of the 3rd dimension. So that lecture, that free lecture we're going to do on Thursday night, is available to everybody. Usually I'm always blown away because there's over 1,000 people usually on these calls. It's just phenomenal. It's like, okay, that's great. And it's a lot of fun to play.
But they have to register, right, beforehand?
You have to register. Yeah, you have to register, just because it's a go-to webinar and they require registration. Okay,
perfect. Yeah, I registered last night when I was finding out the information on it. So I will be joining in on Thursday. I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
Is there anything else you want to say before we head out for the day?
How many weeks do you have? No, I think we covered a whole lot of things. So.
Yeah, I think it was a nice, and there is like so much out there that, so much great information you provide. For those who have Gaia TV, there was a 2-part series you did with Regina Meredith. Is that her name?
Yes.
That was, you really covered a lot of stuff in those 2 parts, and I really enjoyed it. I actually watched it twice because it was so packed full of stuff that, you can't even grasp it all in one thing. So
I'll tell you, along those lines, we just published a book. We're not big in books, but this is the 3rd one we've done. This is completely guided by, this is what Mastering Alchemy is. It's called The Course in Mastering Alchemy. And it lays it out from, here's how you play with the rose, to here's what happens when you build that living light body and start to add 6 additional strands of DNA into your space. It will take you through the whole course. It is not the course. There's lots of structural stuff that's not in the book, but I think $16 on Amazon. It's about 365 pages, but it's a course. It's not filler. It's not fluff. It is the information. It is the channelings. It is my conversations with Archangel Michael or Metatron or Yeshua. All that is in the book. So for somebody who wants to get an idea of what does this journey into this higher dimension look like, the book is an easy way to do it for everybody. But the free lectures, they're always different. They're always a meditation. There's always an instruction. And my ending question is, how did that feel?
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to it, Jim. I'm honored that you took the time to come on, and I recommend anybody to go to check out all of the available resources that you have that are so tremendous in this time, the shift that we're in, this transition. And lots of love and light to you, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. Keep doing what you're doing. You're a tremendous asset to this whole process.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.